Greetings to all of you. In this video, I want to talk about Sedna, that Oort cloud planetary body that is guiding us in a profound way through this time of shifting into the age of Aquarius, this critical time in the precessional cycle, and this time of transformation and transmutation for us on the planet. Let me review a little bit of the meaning of Sedna and of her journey in relationship with our solar system, and then talk about some of the really important transits that we're experiencing with Sedna now and across the next few years. I've done earlier videos on Sedna going more in depth into her story and her origins, her relationship with the Inuit people. So I'll put those links below, but let me focus now on the importance of her message to us in this time. Sedna was discovered in November of 2003, and part of why she wasn't discovered before that is this image is showing you how large and elliptical her orbit is compared to our inner solar system. This is an image of our inner solar system. This is Sedna in her orbit, which is approximately 11,400 years. She comes from the Oort cloud, which is that outer sphere of debris from the origins of our solar system that surrounds our solar system and is the boundary between our solar system and other star systems. What's extraordinary is that she comes from that inner Oort cloud and then comes close to our solar system, and she will be at her closest in 2076, and then she will move back out in her orbit towards the Oort cloud again. But you can see that she is coming from that outer boundary of our solar system, bringing her message, her information from the stars to us in our inner solar system. From our Earth perspective, she is now in the stars of Taurus, here below the horns of the bull. But in the tropical zodiac chart, she is now at 0 degrees of Gemini. Sedna moved into Gemini fully in April of 2024. And she moves very slowly in that her orbit is an 11,400 year orbit. So I don't look closely at her transits for us in our individual charts. What's significant about Sedna is because she has this 11,400 year orbit, she is a messenger to us of times of shift on our planet and shifts in our human consciousness. If you think about her relationship with the precessional cycle, as I've talked about in previous videos, we go through these times of significant change on the earth every 12,000 years. At the beginning and ending of a precessional cycle, where we are now, and at the midpoint. The last time we were at the midpoint of the precessional cycle was the time of the cataclysm on our planet and the last ice age 12,000 years ago. We're at that critical time of transition and transformation now. And I think it's significant that Sedna is the messenger, that when she comes in close to our solar system, she is indicating this is a time of a big shift, that we're being called into a radical change in our experience of as humanity and our consciousness on the planet. So as she's here now, she is guiding us in this time of change. And I think her story, the Inuit story of Sedna, the goddess of the deep sea, is very significant in terms of her meaning for us collectively in this time. Let me briefly review the story of Sedna from that Inuit perspective. And this is a summarized version. There are different variations of the story, but this one I think captures the meaning in how Sedna, this planetary body, is communicating her message to us in this time. In the Inuit story, Sedna was this maiden living in her village. And part of the expectation in her village was that the young women would marry someone from another village in order to bring another person into the village who could help with the hunting and fishing and the sustaining of the people. But somehow Sedna felt different. And when her father would pressure her to marry and bring suitors to her to try to convince her to marry, she continually said no and listened to her own inner knowing. She was following her own path. At some point, a stranger comes to the village with a hood over his head, this mysterious stranger. And somehow, Sedna feels called to go with him. And he takes her in his boat and goes out to this remote island far from her village. And as they get onto the island, he pulls back his hood, and Sedna realizes she is with Raven. Raven, for the Inuit people, was the shaman, the teacher, the messenger. She realizes now that she's far from her village, far from the life that she's known. She's now on this remote island. And in this isolation, she realizes she is on a journey of spiritual initiation. She is being guided and taught by Raven to learn the ways of spirit, to be guided in her own process of spiritual initiation and transformation. This goes on for a period of time, and Raven hunts and brings back fish to sustain her. But this is an intense time for Sedna, a liminal time. She's left the life that she's known. She's now in this process of transformation. Meanwhile, back in her village, her father's getting increasingly distraught and upset that she hasn't returned, and fears what may have happened to her, and is angry that she's left the village and not done her duty and followed the rules that she was meant to follow. So he goes out in search of her. Finally, the father finds Sedna on this remote island, and he comes to the shore and tells her that she needs to return to the village with him. Sedna at this point realizes she's come too far on this spiritual journey. She can't go home again. She refuses to return, but her father, angry and upset, grabs her, forces her into the boat, and starts paddling back to the village. Meanwhile, Raven, who was off hunting, returns and realizes that the father has taken Sedna. And in his anger, he flies and down by the ocean and touches the tip of his wing to the waves and sets off this massive storm. The waves get turbulent. The storm is terrifying. The father realizes this is Raven. This is the creator deity. This is the one who can control the seas and the storms, and knows that his life is in danger. So, in an effort to appease Raven, he tosses Sedna into the sea and says, "Take her. Just let me be free. Let me survive." And he strives to paddle his way back to the village. Meanwhile, Sedna is now in the storm-tossed seas. She tries to grab the boat to get back into the boat. And her father, in his anger and in his fear, hits her hands with his paddles. She tries again to grab the boat to get into safety. He again strikes her hands until her fingers break off, and she watches as they disappear beneath the waves and morph and become seals and creatures of the sea. Sedna, in her desperation, in these wind-tossed waves, in the storm, in the wind, realizes in that moment there is no safety in the boat. She can't go back to the ways of the past. Facing her fear of drowning, of death, Sedna surrenders to the sea, to the storm, to the waves and the ways of Raven. And in this critical moment in the story, Sedna chooses to dive deep into the sea. She dives beneath the storm-tossed waves into the stillness of the deeper ocean beneath the storm. She dives deeper and deeper, and as she does, she realizes she is morphing and transmuting until Sedna, the maiden, dissolves and becomes the goddess of the sea. Now the whales and seals call her by name. They honor her power, her strength, that she is now the goddess of the sea who can gift the people with the food from the sea or herself call in the storms. She's changed into a different dimensional reality, into a different way of being. And the people in the village now honor her and respect her. This is the story of Sedna and her transmutation and transformation. And this is the message that she brings to us when she comes in close to our inner solar system. Sedna is saying, this is the time of spiritual initiation, of transformation, of transmutation. Sedna's come into our awareness now as we are at this critical time in the precessional cycle, as we are transitioning into this new age of Aquarius, as we are leaving the Kali Yuga and moving into higher consciousness. As I talked about with Bibhu Dev Misra, when we talked about the Yuga cycle and its version of the precessional cycle and its understanding that we as humanity go through these periods of descending and ascending consciousness. And the Kali Yuga is this 6,000-year period in the 24,000-year precessional cycle, when we come to our lowest level of consciousness, when we forget who we truly are as humanity, when we separate ourselves from the oneness of all of life and our interconnectedness with the life around us, when we get caught in power over paradigms. And it's when we're in this time of the lowest level of consciousness, from the Yuga perspective, Yuga cycle perspective, that we move into the patriarchal paradigms. That is the only time in our cycle of 24,000 years that we move into these patriarchal power over paradigms of domination, separation, destruction. We're now moving out of that time, called to end those patriarchal paradigms and power over ways of the past, called into higher consciousness, into a time of transmutation and transformation. And Sedna is guiding the way. I want to talk about Sedna and her transits and how she is showing us where we are in this story and in this time of transmutation. Because her orbit is so long compared to the orbits of the planets in our inner solar system, keep a tight orb in terms of significant aspects. And what I want to talk about in this video in particular is when she comes into very potent aspects with Pluto and Uranus, these transpersonal planets that are about transformation, radical shift. From March 2022 to January 2024, Sedna and Pluto, for brief periods of time, were at the same degree in the final degrees of Sedna in Taurus, Pluto in Capricorn. And I think that period of time, as we know, was very much about Pluto and those final degrees of Capricorn calling us in to transforming our systems and structures, calling us in to leaving behind the paradigms of the past, to prepare for the movement into the Aquarian age. And Sedna coming into a trine with Pluto in those final degrees at 28 degrees of Taurus and Capricorn, and then at 29 degrees of Taurus and Capricorn, was saying now is the time to end those old ways. I see this as analogous in the story to when Sedna comes into this realization while she's in her village. I can't follow the rules and conventions of the past. I can't stay in this paradigm of the village and how it's structured and what my role is meant to be. I can't do this. And then as Sedna moves fully into Gemini, the end of April 2024, and then Pluto moves fully into Aquarius November 20th of 2024. Sedna and Pluto come into a trine with Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius saying, time to move into the Aquarian age. Pluto, the planet of transformation that guides us in our evolutionary journey of consciousness, was saying to us collectively, now we cross the threshold fully into the Aquarian age. And Sedna at 0 degrees of Gemini was calling us to transform our beliefs, our ways of seeing things, our paradigms of the past, to activate and energize this movement into the Aquarian age. They were in that dance together at 0 degrees of Aquarius for Pluto, 0 degrees of Gemini for Sedna, from November 20th, 2024 to December 29th, 2024. And then they moved out of being at that exact degree with each other. Sedna is still in those very early degrees of Gemini. And when we come to August 2025, Uranus will have moved into Gemini. It will move back and forth between Gemini and Taurus until it goes fully into Gemini, April 27th, 2026. But in July, on July 7th, 2025, Uranus will make its first movement into Gemini, and then August 3rd through October 9th of this year, Uranus will be conjunct or in direct alignment with Sedna, both at 1 degree of Gemini. And what's extraordinary is it's part of that time, August 23rd through October 9th, Pluto will be at 1 degree of Aquarius. As you can see on this chart, on August 23rd, the time of a new moon in Virgo, Sedna and Uranus will be at 1 degree of Gemini in an exact trine with Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius. And this will be during the time that Saturn and Neptune have also both moved into Aries, and they will be going into their exact conjunction with each other in February of 2026. But this is such a powerful time when Sedna, Uranus, and Pluto in particular come into this exact trine. Remember that Uranus is guiding us also in radical transformation. It is the planet associated with the Tower card in the tarot deck. It is about shattering the old patterns, old forms, in this case in Gemini, old beliefs and ways of seeing things, to move in a radically new direction, to come into the truth, the memory of who we truly are, of what this time is on the planet as we're shifting out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, as we're at this critical time of leaving the paradigms of the patriarchal period, leaving the time of separation, division, and destruction of the Kali Yuga, to move into higher consciousness, to be in this evolutionary leap as humanity. During that period, August 23rd to October 9th, these three will remain in this exact trine. And at that time, Uranus in the sky will be conjunct the Pleiades in Taurus, in alignment with Sedna here also in the stars of Taurus. Transmutation of who we are, Taurus, in our embodiment, transformation of our earth and of our consciousness. Coming back to the chart, it's extraordinary to look at the Sabian symbols and the meaning of these degrees. The meaning of one degree of Gemini is about uncovering new dimensions of life and trusting in the universe. And the meaning of 1 degree of Aquarius in the Sabian symbols is an unexpected thunderstorm. Our needing to be in submission to unforeseen and uncontrollable forces. So I believe that those first interactions of Sedna and Pluto, March 2022 to January 2024, were that time where we were realizing those final degrees of Taurus and Capricorn. We have to change the paradigms that we're caught in culturally, globally. We need to shift. Then I believe that time, November 20th, 2024 to the end of December 2024, is the time when Sedna leaves the village. That time when Sedna and Pluto are in a trine at 0 degrees, Sedna 0 degrees of Gemini, Pluto 0 degrees of Aquarius, is that time when we're being called into the shifts of the Aquarian age. And I see this is the time Sedna leaves her village, follows Raven, sets out on this new path. And it's a path of spiritual initiation. She ends up on this remote island. It is not at all what she anticipated. But when we've been in this process of transition into the Aquarian age, we don't know what the new forms and paradigms will look like. We act in trust to leave the paradigms of the past and open to the changes that we're meant to be moving into. Then the next big shift or configuration with Sedna, with these two planets, comes at the beginning of August, August 3rd, 2025. Sedna is at 1 degree of Gemini now, conjunct Uranus at 1 degree of Gemini. And then starting August 23rd, 2025 through October 9th, 2025, Sedna is conjunct Uranus at 1 degree of Gemini in that exact trine with Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius. See that time when Uranus and Sedna come together at the beginning of August in the story as that time when the father finds Sedna and confronts her and says, "You need to come back." And Sedna says, "I can't." But the father takes this radical step to try to force her back. And I see that critical time when Sedna and Uranus trine Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius as the storm that Raven sets off. It's the crisis point in the story. This is the moment of truth. This is the moment where Raven says to the father, "You are not in control." The father is desperately trying to take Sedna back to the village, to reinforce the paradigms of the past, to keep that sense of control and domination. And Raven is showing him he has no control over these earth changes that are happening, these shifts that are happening, that are calling us all into transformation. And I see that critical time frame, August 23rd through October 9th, as our critical choice point as humanity. There may be an event that really is a wake-up call for all of us. We're seeing more and more storms on the planet. That's both because of climate change, but it's also because we in our solar system are going through the galactic current sheet that is activating increasing storms on all the planets in our inner solar system. So we are experiencing more and more storms and winds and hurricanes and tornadoes and floods. The seas are rising. And I think that period, August 23rd through October 9th, may be a particularly profound time when the changes that we experience on the earth and the storms and the energies coming to us from the sun and the galactic center are like Raven setting off that storm, saying, "Wake up. This is the time of transformation." And again, the meaning of 1 degree of Aquarius is an unexpected thunderstorm, a time of storm. And how do we navigate that time? Do we, like the father, try to be in control and try to lash out at anyone who's a threat? Do we seek to feel like somehow we can stop the storm, the changes, cling to the paradigms of the past? Or do we, like Sedna, realize there is no going back? Those paradigms of the past are over. And do we dare allow ourselves to surrender to the energies of the earth and sky, to the energies of the cosmos that are calling us into this time of transmutation? This is the moment and the time in the story when we, like Sedna, have to face our fear of death, have to face our awareness that we can't go back to the paradigms of the past. We can't fix them, micromanage them, create enough technology to restore them or refine them or make them more in control. This is the time where we realize we as humanity are not in control of ourselves, of our earth. We are a part of the cosmos. We are a part of this hologram. We are being called back into remembrance of that, remembrance of who we truly are and our interconnectedness with all that is. That's the message of Raven. That's the message of Sedna, saying this is the time to awaken. This is the time to see that we are all in a process of transformation and transmutation. Following that very critical period, Sedna will continue in her trine with Pluto. Uranus will move high in further on in Gemini, but Sedna will continue in that trine with Pluto, with Sedna at 1 degree of Gemini, Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius, until December of 2025. This is the time, I think, in the story where Sedna dives beneath the sea. She surrenders to the transmutation that she's in. She honors the energies of the earth and sky and cosmos that are calling her into this change, into this death, rebirth. And she moves into a different dimensional being. She transforms into the goddess of the sea. And we are being called into becoming homoluminous ones, transmuting as humans into a new way of being. But we, like Sedna, need to dare to dive deep, to not get caught in the storm, not try to cling to the boat, not try to go back into the ways of the past, or think that this can be managed by the leaders who are trying to be in control. We are guided to dive into the unknown, into the stillness of the deep sea, into our surrendering to the energies of the cosmos, and going through this transmutation into new ways of being, a new consciousness, a new dimensional reality. As we move into 2026, Sedna and Uranus will come back into exact conjunction at 1 degree of Gemini, May 14th through 30th, 2026. And then again, January 13th, 2027 to March 7th, 2027 at 1 degree of Gemini. But I think that's the ongoing clarity of the shifts that are occurring. But I do believe that these critical, potent times where Sedna is in these powerful transits, conjunct Uranus, trining Pluto, that we're being called into this more profound time of transformation. Where we are right now in that journey is we've been called to leave behind the old paradigms. Sedna and Pluto have done their dance at the end of 2024 at 0 degrees of Gemini, Sedna, 0 degrees of Aquarius, Pluto. We're now in between that time and this really powerful time, August 2025 to October 2025. I think this is the time where, like Sedna, who's left the village, is on the island with Raven, those of us who are awakening, who are in a path of movement into higher consciousness, are on that spiritual journey. We feel like we've left the old ways behind, but they're still there. The village is still there. The father is still trying to be in control of what's happening. And we're kind of in a separate reality. We're in this time where we're in our own exploration and discovery of transformation in this journey, honoring spirit, honoring the call, honoring the transformation that we're in as we're moving into the Aquarian age. But it does feel often like there are two worlds going on the planet, two timelines. Those of the village trying to maintain the paradigms of the past, and we're seeing more and more the world of the fathers striving for even more authoritarian power and control and lashing out at whoever dares to be different. And remember, the patriarchal period is about a power over paradigm that is harmful to all of us. This isn't about getting caught in some kind of polarity with each other around gender issues. The patriarchal paradigm is harmful to men and women. It's toxic to all of us. And we need to leave those paradigms of power over, separation, destruction, domination in the past. But we are seeing, like the father in the Sedna story, the flailing of those who are attached to those paradigms of the patriarchal power over ways of being are actively trying to regain more control. We, like Sedna, need to stay on our path, follow our own inner knowing, follow her guidance, follow the truth of what is unfolding, and honor these powerful transits that are coming to continue to deepen our journey of transformation and transmutation. So this is a critical time as we're approaching this very potent, powerful time, August to October 2025, to be taking our time to be meditating, connecting with the spirits of the earth and the sky, and deepening in our own spiritual journey and path of healing and transformation, and opening to trust in these energies of the cosmos that are guiding us through this time of transmutation. To know that Sedna is guiding us, and these energies of the cosmos are there for us to support us in knowing that even though we feel we're in the storminess of the sea, we are being guided to dive into the unknown and into this time of transformation and transmutation, to become homoluminous ones, to move into the fifth dimension, to regain our interconnectedness with the sacredness of the life around us, to know that the whales and seals will call us by name, that the energies of the earth will say, you're back in connection with us, back in communion and communication with us. And we will become one with the earth and sky and cosmos, and rejoin the galaxy as part of the oneness of all that is. This is the message of Sedna. These are the critical transits that are showing us the way. May we continue to support each other, to move beyond our fears, to face the challenges of this time and the storminess of this time, to know that we can dive into the unknown, surrender to the mystery, trust the transformation we're being guided into, to become homoluminous ones, beings again in right relationship with the earth and sky and cosmos and all that is. May Sedna support us in this journey, and may we listen to her message and be guided by Raven and guided by these energies coming to us from the sun, from the galactic center, taking us through this death, rebirth, into new ways of being human and a new earth. Blessings and love to all of you. Blessed be.